Eric, it is our weekly Q&A, and it's been a fun week as the rumor mill swirls around, and we are not going to avoid any questions. And you definitely don't get any questions avoided on the board. Inside Texas, $1 for your first week. We would love to see you over there. You can ask all these questions directly, ones that you don't get answered over here or on our video chats. Let us begin, man. I said we weren't playing around. Odds we are looking for a new head coach come springtime.
Well, I mean, he used springtime, which would be, I don't know how that would happen. Normally it happens right here in January or December or January. I think it's more likely than not that Sark comes back. Obviously, we've talked about the NFL since really the day he was hired. You know, the reason we brought it up then was, yeah, he had lofty aspirations one day coaching in the NFL. By that time, he had been out of the NFL for a couple of years when he was offensive coordinator for the Falcons. Uh, I put it at a greater than 50% chance that he is back. I think there's a lot of things to discuss. Does he want to be at Texas still? I think that's a yes. What are his options in the NFL? The season might put a little bit of a damper on the way he's viewed, but he still has a lot of core competencies that would play very well in the NFL. I think some of this talk is overblown, but I understand why fans are not going to ignore it. There's been two rumors that have permeated throughout the internet. I understand why fans are concerned. Obviously, there's some questions about his focus due to the way the offseason unfolded and a couple of these losses. But a lot of it, I think, is just overblown simply by the fact that Texas has 3 losses. And I think it's only 2 of those are the highly ranked teams on the road. They haven't played well this season, but there's plenty of opportunity for him to get it back on track.
How do your sources perceive things currently? From the outside, it appears Texas is stuck in neutral in recruiting, player development, and coaching adaptability, accountability.
Everybody's disappointed with the way the season's gone. It's a very remote chance that they even make the playoffs, which is disappointing. But they didn't forget how to just develop players all of a sudden. They lost 25 players to the NFL in back-to-back years, somewhere around there, over 20 for sure. There's a lot of replacement. They could have done things better in the portal. Like I've been saying since the Florida loss, a lot of this just runs downhill from some offseason mistakes. He can get this back on track relatively quickly. They are young in some places. We need to see more development at some positions. You like to see Ryan Wingo playing more consistently. That hasn't been the case. But I think we are seeing some players get developed at the same time. It's just going unnoticed because the season hasn't been the way fans want it to be.
What do you think is the likelihood that Sark rights the ship over the offseason and we're a legit title contender this time next year?
I think there's a decent chance. It's up to Sark. He has to recognize the mistakes he made this past year and correct them. Not taking any offensive line is the biggest one. Probably should have taken a running back. I think that's pretty clear. Maybe last year he should have taken a wide receiver. He's going to have to make a lot of tough decisions about his coaching staff, about player retention. But I think that there's a lot of clear fixes in front of him, namely going to the portal and get some experienced veterans. But he has to figure out a lot. What's his preferred run game? How does he need to find a new offensive line coach? I think he does. Does he find an offensive line coach that fits? What's he going to do about the defensive secondary? They're getting worse by the week, and who knows what's going to happen this weekend against Arkansas. I think he's made some mistakes in picking out PK's secondary coach rather than letting PK do it. So he does have to have a very good offseason, but it's possible for him to correct almost everything that's gone wrong in a pretty short period of time. A lot of people are making out a much longer list than I think there actually is. They're breaking down each position that needs to be addressed. Every single year we go into the portal window knowing that a number of positions need to be addressed. This is no different. He just has to be properly focused on where the biggest issues are.
If Sark were to give up play calling, is it more likely that Sark hires a new OC to call plays or allows Milwee to take the reins? Which would you prefer?
Well, I mean, I'm still, I'd be surprised if Sark isn't calling plays next year. And I'm sure he's getting some brushback behind the scenes on that. There's 4 ways to look at this. Sark continues to call plays. He elevates Milwee. He could bring in a new offensive line coach that has play calling experience, or maybe even a wide receiver coach that has play calling experience. Or he can bring in a new offensive coordinator, but at that point, he would probably have to get rid of Milwee, which I don't think is going to happen. I'd be perfectly fine with Milwee calling it. Sark can still do all the game week prep. He can still write the script. He's still going to be very involved on the headsets, especially situationally. It's not like he just goes from all to nothing in short order. He could still have his hands he could have his fingerprints all over the game plan and the play calling as well. I still think it's most likely that Sark continues to call plays, but let's see what happens. Obviously, again, there's going to be a lot of talks between Sark and management about what needs to happen. And Sark has said, If he can't do both, then he'll take a step back. I think we're going to see that tested this offseason.
Do you think we take a portal wide receiver? Obviously not Coleman, but someone more in the mold of a Mario Craver, or do we already have that guy on the roster?
Now, I've been on the record saying it's not the biggest need, right? I care more about offensive line. I care much more about offensive line and running back than I do wide receiver. The time they probably should have taken one this past offseason, I think that's clear. Obviously, on the heels of having 5 drops against Georgia, 5 costly drops, everybody wants to hear about a big name wide receiver. I still don't think they need to take one, at least not a high dollar one. Now they could take another sure-handed, get open guy. I'd be perfectly fine with that. Craver's a little bit different in that he was in the mold of the guys that Texas found before, in that he hadn't had his breakout yet, and they got him relatively affordable. Craver's going to demand a whole lot more this next year than this past offseason. So I don't think they'll find a Craver necessarily. They should look if they can find one at a bargain, no doubt about that. I think, right now, I don't think wide receivers on the shopping list. They really like Dalen McCutcheon. They really like Khalil Lockett. Obviously, DeAndre Moore is looking likely to be back. Almost assuredly, he'll be back. I think a lot of fans are, because no big breakout happened this year, they don't expect one next year. I think that would be wrong. Somebody's going to break out. They've got a number of options in 2026. They could bring one, but it won't be a high dollar guy.
Can we roll with Gooseby and Baker next year, or would you add a portal tackle to go along with the inside guys?
You can't mess around with offensive line. So they need somebody that can come in and, if not compete with Baker, then he needs to add credible depth. Somebody that's played tackle before. And if tackle doesn't work out, maybe adds value at guard. They do need to bring in a body to compete, add depth at tackle. But I think they will be okay rolling with Gooseby and Baker as starters next season. But you can't leave anything to doubt next year. They've got to bounce back in a major way. They've got to take advantage of Arch's last season. Leave no stone unturned. No excuses about the offensive line next season. The offensive line gets right, the whole offense will get right, and then the whole team will be will have a much better chance of reaching their goals. They can have a drop off on defense. Let's say, well, the defense has already dropped off. But let's say they're in the 15s to 20 range on defense. That won't matter nearly as much as if the offense is in the 5 to 10 range.
Why is PK so dependent on someone else to call the coverage? Is that normal for a DC to outsource that? Doubt you can answer, but how quickly do you see the secondary situation being rectified?
Yeah, the thing with PK is it goes back to Boise State, where he always had somebody calling the secondary with him. Jimmy Lake had as much sway with Chris Peterson as PK did, so they were truly co-DCs, and then that continued at Washington. That's kind of how it broke down. They matched their coverages to the front very well at Washington and Boise State. In that time, since then, PK got to Texas. Terry Joseph and Blake Gideon had already been hired. This past season, he had no say in Akina. Just let him go hire his guy. And then that way we're going to be much, much better suited to hold him accountable for when his defense doesn't play well. Can the secondary be fixed next season? Yeah, I think so. They're still going to have a lot of talent, but man, they've got to hit the portal hard there too. They need an experienced safety. They need to do everything they can to try to talk Jelani McDonald into coming back and boosting his NFL profile for a big breakout. We can do the same for Jade. We can do the same for you that we did for Jade. And they need to hit the portal hard at safety and possibly at corner. The talent is going to be there, but the coaching is not going to be there unless they make a very good hire.
Quick timeout. If you have a move coming up in the Dallas area, put real estate agent Josh Holden in your starting lineup. He's a UT grad, a lifetime Texas Ex, and he scouted every inch of the Metroplex. From Highland Park and Preston Hollow to Uptown and Old East Dallas, Josh Holden knows the market, and he's going to match you with the perfect home. On top of that, he has years of experience in commercial property management, so he has the playbook for contracts, curb appeal, and everything in between. Bottom line, Josh Holden is an easy win. He is reliable, savvy, and he helps you close with confidence. Reach him at josh@joshholdenrealestate.com, or you can call or text 972-917-8081. Contact info is in the description. Any sense of whether all this noise is going to impact the current team trying to win 2 more games to close out the season?
I mean, that's my concern. I'll find out much more on that Thursday for our Friday intel. That is a concern, just the way they're playing, and it's unfortunate. They did not play well against Georgia, drops and all these other things. But until that meltdown in the late third, early fourth, that was a competitive game. Hopefully they're not down too much. Not only that loss, but the chances of making the playoffs. You never know how a team's going to react. I'll make a lot of calls, Thursday for my Friday intel. Much of this week, I've been following all the Sark stuff and broader coaching search information. I'll find out how the team is. Obviously, they got to finish the season strong. Beat Arkansas, beat A&M. Everybody's feeling a lot better about things.
Other than Arch getting experience and playing better, and I guess you could say punt returns with Niblet, I haven't seen any, much less substantial improvement in anything we do. Am I not seeing the forest through the trees? Are we meaningfully better anywhere than the start of the season?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't sell the significance of Arch playing better and Sark figuring out what he's good at. That's massive. That's something that can propel you into next year and give you a lot of optimism. Arch is a good quarterback right now. He's going to be excellent next year, assuming they fix the offensive line. So that's big. But that also trickles down to the passing attack. Outside of the drops against Georgia, the wide receivers up until then had been playing much better, and I think they were on the same page, getting on the same page with Arch. Now, nobody wants to hear that after a poor game. Wingo, he's got to get right. DeAndre Moore had a drop that was uncharacteristic for this year. Parker Livingston and Emmett Mosley probably not involved enough in that game. However, I think we've seen strides up until that game. Hopefully, we see them in the next 2 weeks, so people feel better about the overall passing attack and not just Arch. The edges are a lot better than they were earlier in the season. At least they're more productive. I mean, they were always talented coming in, and Colin Simmons played hard the whole season. But I think he was pressing a little bit too much early on. The edges have been really good. The depth there has been good. I think they have been developing some depth on defense. I think Anthony Smith is going to be much better because of the experience he's getting this year. He's going to be extremely important with the loss of Anthony Hill. I'm excited about seeing Cade Phillips. I think the duo of Cade Phillips and Grayson Littleton, though a little inexperienced next year at corner, is extremely talented. Both those guys are first, second round draft picks, I think, long term. So yeah, there are things to be happy about. There's always reason for optimism. There's silver linings, but I still want to see how the next two games go. I want to see the team psyche against Arkansas and A&M. They better be up for both games. I don't want to hear any excuses. I saw South Carolina with their season kaput in the drain play very hard against A&M. Now they fell short because they're not very good, but they didn't lack for effort. Texas needs to come out and play with effort. And I'll feel a lot better about some of the strides that they've made this season.
Everyone, thank you guys for watching, and you know where to ask your questions. Inside Texas, we'd love to see you over there. $1 for 1 week. Everyone, have a great day. Goodbye.